Welcome to This Explainer. I am so glad you're joining us today because honestly, we're going to dissect something pretty wild. You know that mental picture we all have of a school or a college campus? Bustling, brightly lit, filled with students and professors, basically a total bubble of safety. Well, today we're stripping that assumption right down. We're breaking down 3 real, deeply unsettling encounters that actually happened on school campuses. And we aren't just looking at these to get a good scare. No, we're using them as serious case studies. We want to see exactly what we can learn from them about human instinct and ultimately survival. I mean, take a second and really think about it. What actually happens when the safest places on campus become the most dangerous? It completely flips your perspective, right? We'll be using this question as our guiding light today. We're analyzing these stories to really understand our own everyday vulnerabilities. It's all about looking closely at those terrifying moments when your ordinary, boring routine suddenly fractures and the environment you trust implicitly, well, it turns against you. To make sense of all this, we've broken our analysis down into 3 distinct categories: the intimate threat, the isolated threat, and finally, the deceptive threat. Okay, let's dive right in. Part 1, the intimate threat. The roommate. So this first case study takes us to a small university in West Virginia back in 2021. The campus was pretty much a ghost town because of the pandemic, but our subject actually chose to live in the dorms and, you guessed it, got assigned a roommate. Now, I want you to put yourself in this student's shoes for a minute. It's early Monday morning, right around 6 a.m. She's just gotten back from a weekend away, she crashes, and she goes back to sleep on this thick memory foam mattress. The room is dead silent. But then, the edge of the bed indents. At first, it's really subtle, but cut to a week later and it escalates. She's lying there completely frozen in the pitch black and the entire side of her mattress sags. Someone is physically sitting next to her. Now, her bed is lofted so high it literally requires a step stool to get into, which means this isn't an accident. It is deliberate, it's calculated. And then, during a third incident, while she's squeezing her eyes shut, a hand firmly grasps the back of her neck. She stays paralyzed in absolute terror for what feels like hours until this person finally leaves the bed. The craziest part? Every single time she turns around afterward, her roommate is lying perfectly still, facing the wall, totally pretending to be asleep. Looking back, the warning signs were glaringly obvious. Let's put on our forensic investigator hats for just a second here. This roommate didn't just snap out of thin air, There were clues. For starters, she had this noticeably privileged attitude and casually dropped right at the beginning that her previous roommate hadn't stayed long. But conveniently, she left out the reason why. Oh, and then there was the drawer. An entire locked drawer packed with roughly 10 bottles of prescription medicine. When asked, she vaguely brushed it off as being for a skin issue. You see, these are all scattered puzzle pieces of this escalating predatory behavior that happened long before any physical contact. Now, after finally reporting the incident and switching rooms, our subject realized, to her dread, that she'd left a book behind. She goes back to retrieve it, completely assuming the room is empty. But as she turns to leave, her former roommate is standing silently right in the doorway. It's like something out of a movie. And this moment brilliantly captures the sheer tension of the situation. The roommate coldly stares and asks, "Where's your new room?" The student, relying purely on raw survival instinct, just lies. She gives a fake floor, a completely fake location, and dodges these really persistent follow-up questions until she can finally slip away. That simple, lightning-fast lie, it effectively closed the door on a terrifying near-miss encounter. All right, that brings us to part 2, the isolated threat. The empty lab. For this one, we're heading over to the University of Huddersfield in the UK. A student's laptop totally dies, forcing her to trek to the notoriously isolated business building late at night. And this timeline, it perfectly illustrates that creeping, slow burn escalation of terror. At 10 p.m., she gets there. The building smells overwhelmingly of cleaning chemicals, which means the janitorial staff has already wrapped up and gone home. She is entirely alone. Then, around 11:30 p.m., that dead silence is broken. A door slams somewhere deep inside the building. Seconds later, slow, heavy footsteps start echoing down the hall. These are the footsteps of someone who wants to be heard. They stop right outside her door, and then, 10 minutes of dead, agonizing silence later, the terrifying sounds shift. They move from the hallway directly into the ceiling. Let's actually rewind to that moment at the door for a second. Imagine the visceral panic. You're in an empty, sterile academic building. Heavy footsteps halt just on the other side of your computer lab door. You hold your breath. And then, the door handle is violently rattled. This wasn't just some security guard doing a casual check. As the student noted, this was someone deliberately trying to scare her. Sure, the lab doors locked automatically, which gave her this thin, fragile barrier of safety, but the pure malicious intent radiating through that shaking handle, it was undeniable. But here's the thing, a locked door really only works if the room is an actual vault. After the rattling finally stopped and the footsteps faded away, she breathed a sigh of relief. She thought it was over. But 10 minutes later, she hears this distinct, heavy, dragging sound directly above her head. Someone was shifting the thin, drop ceiling tiles. The locked door wasn't going to stop them. They were bypassing it entirely. So she packs her bag in a flash and breaks into a frantic sprint out of the lab, beelining for the stairwell. And this is where the environment so drastically contrasts with the actual threat. She's in this sterile, brightly lit, super formal academic building, but as she pushes into the stairwell and makes the massive mistake of looking up, she sees a man on the landing above. He isn't a student, he's definitely not a professor, he's wearing these baggy, torn clothes, and the most chilling part, he is just standing there, staring down at her, with his mouth hanging open in this wide, incredibly unsettling grin. She bolted. She sprinted all the way across campus to her dorm without ever looking back. The very next morning, she actually had to go back in the broad daylight to submit her project. And when she peered into that computer lab, she found chilling confirmation. The ceiling tile directly above the exact desk where she had been sitting, it was gone. The corner tile was missing too. This stalker hadn't just been aimlessly wandering the halls. He had deliberately tracked her, tested her door, and then systematically executed a plan to drop into that locked room right on top of her. Which brings us to our final case study today. Part 3, the deceptive threat, the imposter. Now we're shifting gears to the middle of a bustling school day at a newly built high school, also in the UK. This school actually shared a building with a nursery, making it a really complex, busy environment. We need to deconstruct this deception because it is incredibly calculated. The school had a really strict security system. You needed photo ID lanyards just to open the doors, while here is exactly how this predator bypassed all of that. Step 1, he found a dropped student lanyard out front. Step 2, he flipped the ID card backward in its holder. This was actually a huge trend among students who wanted to hide their photos, so to anyone passing by, it didn't look overly suspicious. Step 3, he used it to scan directly into the school foyer. And Step 4, he just waited in the cafeteria during class hours, successfully isolating his teenage target when she was given rare permission to use the restroom alone. The absolutely crucial point here is how he initiated contact. He startled her at first, laughed it off like it was nothing, and then hit her with a seemingly innocent request. He says, "I need some help getting some work things out of my car. Do you mind coming out with me for just a sec?" Because he was wearing that official lanyard, and because he was an older adult standing confidently inside a secure building, she just implicitly trusted him. I mean, she assumed he was a teacher. He expertly weaponized her ingrained respect for authority to lure her right out of the safety of the school walls. He walked her out of the building in total silence. He was acting noticeably nervous, shifting his hands in and out of his pockets. But the true danger lay in the physical layout of the campus itself. To get to his car, they had to walk about 55 yards away from the main building, down to a car park that was completely visually obscured by this thick line of bushes. He purposely guided her into an architectural blind spot. They were completely out of sight from any school windows or any security personnel inside. So, they finally arrive at this blue car. He tells her his bags are on the trunk, but as they get within just a few meters, the whole illusion shatters. She looks through the windows of the car, and the horrifying truth becomes crystal clear. It was an elaborate trap. She spots at least 2 other men hiding silently in the back seat. She freezes, and realizing she's seen them, the ambush literally explodes. The back door swings open violently. A man scrambles out of the car, and the imposter teacher suddenly lunges, grabbing her arm in a vice grip. Keep in mind, this girl's 5'2", underweight, and this man is massive. But her survival instinct triggers this unbelievable rush of adrenaline. She violently yanks her arm out of his grip and just sprints back toward the school. She can hear their heavy footsteps pounding behind her, chasing her, but she makes it to those automatic glass doors of the foyer, quite literally saving her own life. Security cameras actually caught the men on tape later, which thankfully led to their arrest for attempted kidnapping.
Surviving the unthinkable. It's all about trusting those instincts.
When we pull back and look at the big picture, a really clear pattern emerges here. We've got 3 distinct stories, 3 entirely different campuses, but they share one vital, unifying lesson. In every single story, a tragic outcome became a survival story for one reason. The victim relied on their primal instincts to freeze, flee, or fight. The student in West Virginia froze in her bed to avoid triggering an attack. The student in the lab fled from the ceiling stalker. And that 16-year-old girl fought off the grip of a kidnapper.
Danger doesn't always look like a monster hiding in the shadows, you know? Sometimes it looks like your brand new roommate. Sometimes it's an empty hallway. Or sometimes it's wearing the lanyard of a trusted teacher.
So, I want to leave you with this final thought to chew on as you go about your day. Take a look around the spaces you inhabit daily, your office, your school, your home. Think about the security measures you blindly trust and the people you just assume belong there. After seeing how easily, how quietly these boundaries can be breached, are you truly as safe as you think you are? Thank you so much for joining me for this explainer. Keep your eyes open, trust your gut, and stay safe out there.